Hey guys, it's me again. So yeah, I'm back, this week, as I said that would be. So there's going to be two anecdotes to this story that I'm going to get started off with. Number one, life can be very unpredictable. And number two, everything happens for a reason, essentially. So that's what kind of encompasses my whole journey into optometry itself. Just because I didn't know that I was going to be doing optometry, not in year 11 when I was doing my GCSEs, not in year 12 when it was my first year of A levels, and I didn't even know in year 13 that I was going to be doing optometry, which is, the year that you sit your A levels. So the whole story of getting into it is, it's a long one, to be fair. So let's start off, I think, COVID year 2020. So during that year, it was getting to about March, April time, and of course the lockdown got announced, the first lockdown. And during that first lockdown, essentially, it became apparent that the GCSEs weren't going to be happening. It was a very interesting time actually, because I remember that press conference by Boris Johnson, who was Prime Minister at the time, and he basically said GCSEs will not be going ahead. And that was kind of crazy at the time. I remember having a good 3-4 hour phone call with one of my friends, because it was just absolutely insane having that stress and pressure of those exams being taken off essentially in an evening. At that point it was like there was nothing left to study for, and it was just really interesting. That same evening as well, funnily enough, I beat the Ender Dragon for the first time in Minecraft, the proper way, through the survival world, but we'll get to that a bit later. So yeah, it got to results day. We got essentially teacher assessed results. It was whatever our teachers think we deserved, plus whatever we got in our mocks, and it was the better of the two grade essentially. So that being said, I ended up with some pretty interesting results, to be fair. A 9, which is a top grade, I got those in 2 subjects essentially. One being design and technology, and one being physics. I got 8s in chemistry. I think maths I got an 8 in as well. And then we got 7s in biology, computer science, religion, philosophy and ethics, and Mandarin as well, with 2 6s being in English language and English literature. Now the significance of this part of the story, well, is when you get to the application process of, certain medical schools, they do take your GCSEs, unfortunately, into account. Since my GCSEs were pretty decent, but they also weren't good enough to get a high scoring application on a medical school thing, this meant one of 2 things: that my UCAT score had to be pretty exceptional. I'm talking about 2800 or higher. Of course, with situational judgment, it had to be a band probably 3 or higher. I think some place will flat out reject you if you got a band 4 in situational judgment. So yeah, I was stuck with that conundrum. Then starting the A levels, then I was a bit of a psycho, and I essentially chose biology, chemistry and physics. Now you might be thinking, wow, that guy literally has no life. He probably spent all of his time studying. So I went into A levels. Unfortunately, at that time, I did not have a good work ethic. I'm going to tell that to you guys right now. I would literally have my lessons, come home, not cover anything, that I'd learnt in the lessons. And eventually, month after month, that starts to build up. And you get to your exam period and you are genuinely confused about what you're meant to do. You've got so much work, it's very overwhelming as well. So I sat my year 12, I think, mocks, as you call it, or end of year exams they were. And basically the consensus at that point was that whatever grade you got in your mock, you'd essentially increase that by 1, and that would be the predicted grade that you get at university. So it got to that point, and unfortunately what happened was I got B, C and D in these mock exams. Absolutely horrible that was, I never felt, I think, anything like it before. I just felt pure disappointment. That got upped, of course, to A, B and C under normal circumstances. But there was something going on at that period in life, you know, which made it quite hard to be focusing with school and studies, of course. So upon, you know, appealing with extenuating circumstances, I got that upped to A star AB. Most medical schools accepted 3 A's, you know, like minimum. That's with, I think, without widening participation. If you're under widening participation, which I wasn't, you know, then that'd be good enough to get in. So alongside that disappointment, we go on to our UCAT, which I sat in, I think it was September of that year. So with that, that is essentially an exam which has multiple stations. You know, you've got quantitative reasoning, which is going to be essentially maths and sort of like quick maths related thing. Abstract reasoning, I think they scrapped this one, I'm pretty sure now. But at that time, it was, we had to find a similarity between shapes, similar to an IQ test, for example. Then you also had verbal reasoning. I was awful at verbal reasoning, I can't lie. That is one thing why I always got 6s in English. I just could not, you know, uncover the true meaning of like these texts that give us in exams, basically. You know, I'll lean more towards the sciences. So yeah, we had verbal reasoning, then we had non-verbal reasoning as well. I was pretty good at that section. And situational judgment. So you would think with that disappointment with the year 12 exams, I would have finally locked in and, you know, got to my UCAT and really tried, but no, I got 2320 band 3. That is really bad, you know, that's not going to get you anywhere considering the GCSE scores were so low, and now on top of that your UCAT's so low. So essentially at that point I was like, you know, med school's kind of binned off at the moment. No chance I can, you know, get into that any med school with those scores. You know, to get you rejected, you wouldn't even get an interview for that. So then year 13 is where the mentality started to change a little bit on my part, and that was I started to try a lot more. You know, I always prepared for the test, you know, in advance. Now trust me, it was really difficult. I had a whole essentially year of content which I did not understand, which I was learning myself in year 13 alongside the new second year A-level stuff, which of course is really difficult as well. So I was in that sort of situation where I had to work from, I think, essentially the new year, but even still I wasn't putting in the effort all the way up into exams to try and improve these grades that I'd accumulated. Of course, at the start of year 13, my grades were suffering as well, you know, they were really low. I remember one parents' evening, it was my chemistry teacher at that time, and he was, you know, just disappointed in me, you know. It just felt like that conversation that I, my dad and him were having was essentially, why can't you, you know, put in the effort at the moment? And you know what, looking back at now, I completely agreed with him. You know, there's no excuse. Studying was essentially the only thing I had to do at that time, and I just wasn't doing it. But then something changed. From February to, I think it was, you know, May, that sort of period there, pre-study before your A-levels, I just essentially worked through that, and I worked really hard. I was studying every single day. I was having private tuition as well, and from that I was able to come out with grades. Well, I needed 3 A's, of course, you know, I've already told you. I studied very hard. Physics, a subject which I had no clue about. I was starting to get the ropes a little bit. But yeah, I studied and studied. I came out with an A in biology. I wanted an A star in that, you know, I was always really good at biology. An A in chemistry. We did it. But then we got a B in physics. And not only was it a B, I was 1 mark off an A in physics, which is absolutely crazy. So, what do you do after that? Well, I tried to enjoy my results there as best as I could. I remember going out with my friends, watching, I think at the time it was Bullet Train, the movie. One of the most weirdest and fun days I've had at the same time, because I was very disappointed that morning. You know, I came home, I was essentially sulking like for that morning, until one of my mates was just calling me up and he goes, "Aaron, you know, you got to come out." like, you know, you worked really hard for these. You got to enjoy yourself, essentially. Shout out at him, by the way, because that was one of the best decisions I think I've ever made. So yeah, after that you got your academic appeal. I appealed that, and you'll never guess what happened at this point. They gave me a mark, but then they also took one away. So the A was still not achieved. I was still stuck on AAB, meaning I'd have to do a resit then in this coming year. So with this sort of newfound, you know, oh, I should be studying now and I should be putting my entire effort to this test, I sat the UCAT again. So upon sitting the UCAT this time, I achieved a total of 2750 band 2. That is a substantial improvement. I think that places you, I think, in the upper 20% of the test takers. Well, it was in that year that I took that UCAT exam. So that was absolutely unbelievable at the time. I almost felt like I could do it, you know. I had the application ready to be sent off via UCAS. So at this point I was very cautious. So I put 3 medicine unis and then I put 2 biomedical science unis. So I, you know, essentially had these options to choose from. So even if medicine didn't happen again, then that would be fine. But deep down, guys, I ain't gonna lie to you, I've always wanted a career which involves some sort of people aspect. So medicine, of course, has that. You're gonna be seeing lots of different patients, you know, interact with lots of different people, and that's really good. But then biomedical science, I guess you can have some roles which have people interaction in it, but you won't be interacting with that many people, especially if you're working in a lab-based setting, which I'm sure is it's a really good career to have, 100%, but that's just not something that I wanted to do. So, yeah, fast forward a couple of months from that then, I was expecting essentially interview offers, but this is where the GCSEs that I told you from the start, they come into play. So again, your application point score thing is going to be based on these GCSEs. But if I had achieved 3 A's at my A levels, they would have taken up the point score of the GCSEs, so you'd get a maximum point score in your application, basically. This is true for Aston University, by the way. So again, my point score was lacking due to my GCSEs. UCAT did bump it quite up, and I was going to do resit my physics that year, so essentially I could achieve the 3 A's. But what happened? I still didn't get an interview. In fact, the medical school that I wanted to go to, which was Aston University, I didn't get into it. And, you know, I just felt, again, like I'd failed, and, you know, it wasn't a very good feeling at all. But I did have an inkling about a career that I did want to go into, and that was purely because of the open day that I attended at Aston University as well. And that was optometry. Again, I didn't really know too much about optometry because I hadn't researched it as part of, like, you know, career days, career fairs or anything like that. But at the open day, I decided to attend a talk of it. I was there with my mate as well, you know. I asked him for information about optometry as well. And then I did a bit of digging, you know, here and there within that January to, I think it was March 2023 period. And again, I didn't know too much, but I still went ahead and picked optometry because, you know, it had that people aspect. It was clinical as well, where you review different sort of symptoms and procedures in order to come to a diagnosis so you can refer them on, essentially. So yeah, I essentially emailed Aston University if they could abandon the medical school application and instead do an optometry application in its entirety. So at that time, they gave me about a 1 to 2 week period to essentially make another personal statement, UCAS style, but only specific to optometry. So what did I do? I got to work on it, you know. It took a while. At this point, my personal statements were becoming a lot better than what I'd submitted before, and I came up with a pretty decent one. And from that, I got an interview. So during this interview then, again, I was very nervous for it. I'd never done like a, university interview before. This was a first for me. But we essentially prepared, me and my parents did. I did a bit of research around the subjects as well, like they essentially told us to. I picked a few niche topics, essentially, like diabetic retinopathy, contact lenses, and just general glasses wearing. And that actually proved to be pretty handy. So in the interview itself, there was one question where it was about amblyopia, which is a lazy eye essentially. And it was about a child that came into your practice with a lazy eye. And the mom, you've told her what it is, but she's of course alarmed about this. So what do you do in that situation? That was the question in the interview that was given to me. So this is the point where I knew that I'd actually secured a place there, because I could feel the whole vibe of the interview change. So I answered, you can correct it with glasses or contact lenses. But then I said this point, I said, but since the child is very young, I think they're about 8 in the question, then you wouldn't fit them with contact lenses because they wouldn't know how to put them in or take them out. So it would be more advisable to fit them with glasses full time. And I think that answer actually sealed it for me in terms of getting into optometry. So then, yeah, from that, I was waiting and waiting, and the offer got accepted. But it wasn't the offer that you were thinking about. It was one of the biomedical science offers that got accepted with my AAB. And then after that, biomedical science at Aston University actually got accepted with an unconditional offer, which means essentially whatever grades you have, we'll let you in. So I was waiting and waiting. We get to about May, June time, the optometry offer lands. And at this point, I've got a decision to make. I've got optometry and I've got biomedical science at a pretty decent university. Which one am I going to choose? So again, this is another debate. I could either go into a profession which has, a healthcare based thing, but then also there's a lot of communication between you and different types of people. Each situation can be different in practice. So yeah, I chose optometry. And again, my knowledge about it was still pretty limited, but I spent a lot of that summer essentially working through and trying to understand what this career would encompass, how far I can go in this career as well. Another incentive as well was that this was the first year they were doing the new master's degree course, and again, I just thought having an integrated master's would be a no-brainer. You study 4 years, your pre-registration year, instead of it being separate, is encompassed in your 4-year course, and at the end of it you come out with more essentially qualifications. So yeah, I went for it. So first year, first couple of lectures, very technical, very clinical. Anatomy of the eye, essentially in first year, you're developing the skills, dancing around the subject. Anatomy of the eye. There was one called visual sciences, VSE, visual sciences. That topic was very interesting. A lot of people didn't like it just because it did delve into more how the brain works and how the images interpreted from your eyes go through your visual pathway and work to the brain basically. So again, that was very interesting at the time. But yeah, sat through first year, got a taste for it and really liked it. End of the first year, I got like a mid 2-1 sort of grade. Again, in first year I got a first, which was, it was really good. I really did appreciate that. I did try my very hardest, since I'd been through the experience before where I didn't get the grades that I wanted in year 12 and my UCAT wasn't good. That sort of ingrained that I had to work hard at university in order to achieve grades that I knew that I could get, because I knew that if I do well in first year, you're going to do well in second year, and if you do well in second year, you're going to do well in third year. Second year was a weird one then. We had a lot of practical assessments. I'm talking, I'd say every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you'd have a practical assessment. And with second year, you really had to manage your time well, because not only did you have that, but you had your lecture content on the side, simultaneously running through. And this is where appliances and dispensing, which is AAD, visual optics, all the calculations, that's where it got a little bit more advanced than first year. So of course you had to spend a lot of time doing that. A lot of people didn't like AAD, I will say. And of course, me, it was okay, you know. In first year, when we had our practicals, I thought it was really good, but then in second year, I just wasn't too much of a fan of it because it was very calculation heavy now. You know, the whole game had changed essentially with AAD. So yeah, we worked through year 2. I was doing very good in my practical assessments, and then we came to our end of year exam, and oh my goodness, I think that was one of the hardest exams I've ever had to sit in my life. Like, I still remember waiting so anxiously for those results because we actually had an India trip planned during that time that was essentially during the resit period. So a huge mistake by me for not telling my parents that. So I was banking on passing here so I could actually go on that holiday. If I didn't pass, I'd have to resit and therefore not go on holiday. Unfortunately, that's just the way it was. So yeah, it gets to that point. We sit our end of year exams. I wait for the results, and I remember it's about 4 days till we fly out to India, and I opened those results and I passed. But the grade that I got on that short answer question paper, which was essentially like do written answers, you know, it's not like a multiple choice, I got 55%, which I thought at the time was absolutely shocking, by the way. Because the whole year in my practical assessments, I was doing particularly well in terms of getting 70% and above in those. But then sort of like the stats got released, like what the year averages were like, what the distribution was like. The average was something like 49% on that paper, which emphasised how hard of a paper it actually was. So again, I was quite happy, but I was still disappointed, of course. Multiple choice paper, not much better. I think I got like 60% on that one. Again, the average, it was a hard paper. Again, it was. And we had this one, which I think was just about professional ethics. I did I just passed fail, I passed that one. So second year, I got a mid to high 2-1. I think it was about 67.5%, 68%, something like that. So then we go into third year, and this third year is where essentially you're going to start becoming more of a professional. So through third year then, it allowed me to essentially progress as a professional. You know, we did our clinics, we had a dissertation, we had all sorts, and we come to the end of year exams on those, and I do really well. Like, I'm amazing. Like, I couldn't believe it. I put in so much effort for these ones as well. I'll go through in future videos how I changed my learning style in order to be able to absorb lecture content a lot better. But yeah, we get those results back. We're working at first now, which really good, you know, thankful to God for that, of course. It helped me through that time. But then we get to pre-registration, and this could not have come at a better time for me, just because with me ending third year and going into pre-reg, this gave me a 2-month gap to essentially enjoy myself. I went on a holiday with my friends, you know, I went to watch Villa in a final in Istanbul. Absolutely wonderful that was. And you might be thinking, why do you think it was a better decision that you actually got into optometry rather than medicine? And I think with medicine, you know, I have a lot of respect for anyone that can sit that course, because you're spending essentially 7+ years studying, adding your qualifications in order to become a really good medical professional. And the same can be said about you know, most courses like that, where you need to study for an extended period of time. Optometry allowed me to essentially half that, focus mainly on the eyes, which was a subject I was already quite interested in, but then also learn that in depth. So, and then what pre-registration has showed me is how I integrate everything that I've learned at university for these 3 years, and how that feeds into day-to-day practice when you're seeing your patients. and how you can interact with this patient in order to ensure that eye health is good, and you're giving them good recommendations for glasses as well, because that is very important. And after going through all that, this career is genuinely the career that I think is the best result for me. Biomedical science, I'm telling you, with how I felt about university and the constant learning of stuff, I don't think I would have enjoyed it too much if I was working in that sort of setting. Again, respect to anyone that picks anything like, biomedical science, anything to do with healthcare or sciences, because it's such a difficult course and group of courses as well. So also alongside that, optometry, when I got into it, I took a gap year before I got into optometry, and that gap year at the time I thought was very, going to be all doom and gloom, but it was actually one of the best years of my life. I will go through this in a future video as well, what I did on my gap year, how I maximised my time during it, and how it allowed me to be, a lot better. Because I did quite a lot during it, I got my driver's license, I had my first job in my gap year, and yeah, that's how it worked out. If I did medicine though, I don't think that some of the stuff that I've been doing over the past few years, I wouldn't really have been able to do that, I was able to follow, Aston Villa through a Champions League campaign, European League campaign. I was able to stay very connected to my friends, from secondary school, and especially some of my online friends as well. Stayed very connected with them. Funnily enough, we actually, me and one of my best friends in real life went to go meet one of my online friends about a month ago, and that was a really good experience. So yeah, all it took was me missing that A by 1 mark to essentially end up in the situation that I am at the moment. And you know what? I think that this has worked out for the best, personally for me, and also like family as well, Doing optometry, I need to spend a lot more time, with my parents and do things with them, which is exactly what I've always wanted to do, I haven't wanted to be too busy. I respect anyone that does medicine, because you need to have a lot of commitment and a lot of spare time to be able to do such a subject. And also the attributes that you need to have as well. You need to be very caring, very understanding, and also very communicative to your patients and to peers, and treat them with respect as well. So yeah, it's, life is a funny way of dealing things to you, where you don't know why something's happening to you, and in the time you can feel so negative about it. But then once you get to this point, you understand whatever happened was absolutely worth it, and you wouldn't have it any other way. So if you two are probably going through something where you think, why is this not happening, and why am I going through this right now? Most chances are it's going to have a positive implication in the future, and there's a reason why it is happening at the moment. So yeah, I've spent the last 3 weeks starting my pre-registration year, and I'm not going to lie to you, it has been very stressful, because what you learn in university is not similar at all to when you sit your pre-registration, or when you go into your first job, for example. It's like another layer of learning that you've got to add to yourself. You need to apply everything that you've learned into your pre-reg. So at the moment, when I do each eye test, you're going to be, I'm stressed personally, I have these gaps where I've got like days off, but then I think like, oh no, I've got a test now in a couple of days, or I've got a test tomorrow, and I'm just very nervous about it. But you know what, when I have tested, I've started doing 5 tests a day recently. It's been very good. I've identified most of the stuff. It's just my management of patients that can do a bit of work, but of course that's going to come with experience. When I see more and more cases, more and more eyes, I'm going to know what to do. Such as a cataract referral the other day. I'll just put this as an example out there. I knew that they probably did need to be referred for the cataract. Their vision was like 6:15, which was essentially they're going to see everything quite blurry, and I knew they had to be referred, but I didn't make that call, unfortunately, to my supervisor. But luckily my supervisor said, you know, you got to refer them for the cataract. So yeah, that's really good. So yeah, that probably comes to the end of the tale. Sorry it's been a bit of a long one, but I hope that it shows that whenever you think about wanting to do something and you've got an envisioned plan in your mind, it might not always go to plan, but I'm sure with whatever you would end up doing or whatever happens is going to be more beneficial for you in the long run, and it's going to also support what you want to do as you're growing up. So yeah guys, I appreciate you listening to this tale. We'll be back again next week as always. I hope you guys you know, keep working hard, you know, do really well, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.